Welcome everybody to the Flow Party. These are weekly events we hold at Zoom. These are completely free, and today we are doing part 2 of Learn Webflow, the basics. Today we're going to go a little bit over other positioning styling. So last week we covered everything from layout, sizing, and some positioning. So we covered static, relative, and absolute. And today we're going to cover sticky. On top of that, we're also going to I'm going to give you like a brief description of what fixed positioning is. And this is all going to be based on a portfolio website. So the website that we're working on is the Eurecah website, which is my agency. Just because I built it myself, I know exactly how it works. And I think it would be super helpful for you guys in case you guys want to do a portfolio. Shout out to Jason, because he was the one that suggested to work on a portfolio project. After that, we're going to go over CMS. So CMS is super, super important if you want to create your own portfolio, because it keeps everything really light. You don't have to create everything static. And yeah, it's just one of the most powerful features that Webflow has. So let's get started. The first thing that we're going to talk about is sticky positioning. So if we go to the body, just so we can display the styling panel here. If you scroll here, you can see that there's a position panel. So if we go into our project, you can see that obviously the first positioning that we have is static. So how do we create this sort of like sticky situation happening here so we can display our projects? If you go to the Eurecah side here, you can see that this is how I did it. But I wanted to show you guys just a simpler way, just because we're covering the basics. So I'm going to go back so we can create this from scratch. The first thing that we have is our first box, which is based on the box model method. Remember how we spoke last week? And if you didn't, everything on the web is a box inside of a box. So the first box that we had, which is our main wrapper, is the page wrapper lesson. And inside of that, we just have, little boxes inside and boxes inside of that. So for the project section, we're calling this project parent. And this is not going to have any styling except for a width of 100% and a height of 100%. Why? Because we just want to make sure that this is spanning the width of the screen and the height of the screen, but we're not giving it any like set values. Now, after that, what we did was we dropped another box, so another div block, and we made that display flex with a direction of horizontal. And we aligned everything to the middle, because if we didn't, then this heading would go to the top left or to the top right, and so on. So we wanted to be in the center. After that, what we did was we created another div block, which was called work image P. P stands for parent. So the way that I do my naming convention, and I took this from Joseph Berry, is everything that it's a wrapper that has things inside is going to be a parent. And everything that it's inside of that parent is going to be a child. And things that are inside the child are, you can call them whatever you want, but obviously, describing what they are. So the work image parent is going to have the image. So the styling that we gave to that was 100% width, 100% height. We're giving it a max width of none, and that's because in the future, I'm going to show you guys how to create parallax effect with images inside. Then we covered overflow hidden, which what this is doing is just clipping the image. So the image that we dropped inside, if we go here, is going to be 110. Because that's what's going to give us that 10% of the parallax effect once we add an animation. Going back to the work image parent, what else do we have here? We have that we want this to be an absolute element because we want it to sit behind this heading. If we didn't give it an absolute position, it would just stack. And that's not what we want. Apart from that, we didn't give it any position inside of that absolute, but if you want, we can always do it to the top left. And the reason why I usually do it on the top left is because sometimes you want to create an animation where it kind of like wipes in, and doing it from the top left will actually make the image not shrink. So let's say you use this one. If you use this one and you want to move the image on the animation, it will just kind of like grow from all the angles, and we don't want that. So let's just keep it here just in case in the future we want to add some animation. Inside the work image parent, we're dropping the image, which, as we said, it's 100% width and 110% height. And we are fitting it to cover, because if we don't, if let's say we leave it at fill, which is the default, the image will pixelate because it's trying to grow and fill that container that it's wrapping in. So we want to make sure that it's on cover and we don't have any other styling. The next box, or the next div block inside of that work parent, is the project heading. As you can see, I named it pretty simple, Proj H, which is short for project heading. This element is set to relative. And as you can see, this one is the layer in front of the image. We didn't give it any other styling. And then inside we have our heading 2. Remember, always think semantically. So we have our heading 1, and then we have our heading 2. On this one, we didn't add any styling. Obviously, I have a style guide set up for this project, so it inherited the font, the weight, and the size for that heading 2. You can do that, and we can cover that if you want, but I predetermined the styling that I wanted for my headings. And the only thing different here is that it's on color white. Now, something that I want to mention is what happens if my heading 2 is set to a default color of black. So in this situation, you kind of like have to assess your website. Is your website body a color black? In that case, then I would go back to my style guide and make all of my heading 2 white, because most likely they will always be in front of a dark background. But for this case, we're just gonna make it white just for the sake of the exercise. Now, just to kind of like go a little bit over that, what happens if the website's body is white? So a lot of the headings will need to be black. So in that case, what I will do is I would create a combo class called isWhite, and then I would give it the color white. Maybe we should leave it like that just because our body is black. So the next thing that we're gonna do here is inside of the project heading, what I'm gonna do, or outside of it, I guess, I want to add a button so people can actually click on the project and go to the landing page once we connect the CMS. So what we can do here is right click and wrap this in a div block and call this main. And because we want this to stack on top of each other, let's make this flex and direction vertical. And we can keep it like, actually, let's keep it centered, because if we don't, remember how in the last class, the button was just going to stretch? Or maybe I can show you that. So let's take this button here that we created, copy, stand on the allow, stand on project main, and drop it here. Where's our button? So let's make this button relative. Okay, so as you can see, that button was set to static. And the reason why it wasn't coming up is because remember how we have 3 layers, right? Or 2 layers right now. Well, yeah, 2 layers. So we have the image layer, then we have the heading layer, and the button was basically hiding in between or behind the image, and we wanted to bring it to the front. So the way to do that is just making that element relative. So remember how I was saying that on the alignment, we didn't want it to stretch because the button was going to stretch. So that's where we're going to add a alignment to the center. Now, what happens here is that, like, you see how we have a space here, but that space is not really real. It's coming from the height of that font. So if we think about responsiveness, that font may vary on, or that font height may vary in different screens. So what we want to do here is make sure that we have a little bit of padding on the project main. And for now, let's add 1 REM. So that way, in the future, we can make sure that if that line height reduces in size, we still have some padding in between the heading and the button. Cool. So that's basically our first project slide. Let's close this up. So this is our work parent, and this is our project parent. Now, if we want to make this sticky and replicate this so it shows all of our projects, we're going to copy, pressing Command C to copy the work parent. And we're going to stand on the project parent, and we're just going to paste that in. Let's do 3 for now. And as you can see, it's just scrolling normal. It has no sticky. In sticky, we want to make sure that the panels are coming on top of each other. So what we're going to do here is we're going to leave this with 100% by 100% height. And what we're just going to do here is we're going to change the position from relative to sticky. Now, the first thing that you have to do when you want to do sticky is make sure that you have a 0 here, 0 pixels, not 0%, none of that, just 0. And right away, you can see that we have our sticky positioning. Now, something to keep in mind with sticky. Remember how the parent, I had it at height 100%? Sometimes you will kind of like get confused. This is super common, and you're going to make this 100% viewport height. Sticky is not going to work because sticky won't work with a set value on the height. So you need to make sure that you make it 100%, and then that way you can actually make it work. This also works for horizontal scroll. So in the future, we can actually create a horizontal scroll if you're interested in that. So what would be a position fixed? So let's say that we want to add a nav bar. So if we add a nav bar and we add it all the way to the top, because that's where we want it to be, we're not going to design the nav bar today, but I just want to show you what fixed means. So let's give this nav bar a class. Let me just duplicate this because I don't want to have any styling. So what we're going to do here is link lesson, and we are going to make, and then we're just going to replicate. Cool. And in here, our brand, nav logo. And I'm going to press Command E and drop an image in here to add the logo, just so we can have something there. Okay, so we have added the logo, but as you can see, it's kind of like off. We're going to give it a layout of flex, display flex, and we're going to make it centered. So let's say that this is the nav bar. Let's take this off. Let's make it 100%. And I just want to make sure that it has space around. I mean, this is not ideal, but let's just remove this, remove that. And why is it not covering the whole?
Are you trying to make that in that container like full width?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, because the nav bar container, like in Webflow's, the nav element in the nav bar, it has a fixed width of like 960, and you can't edit that. So like when people use the nav bar, they just swap it out with their own container.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
why it's staying there, even though it's at width 100%.
Why would they do that?
I don't know.
That's wild. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm just taking off that container. as you can see here. And now let's add a width. Perfect. Thank you, Phil. Let's obviously rename this. So nav. And again, we're gonna go back to flex and we're just going to center it. And we're going to add space in between. So this nav bar has a padding of 4 rem. I don't want that, I want 2. So let's do a 2 rem padding so everything's nice and aligned. And as you can see, this already has a preset position of fixed. What does that mean? That it's always going to be on the top. And another important thing is that when you use fixed, you want to make sure that if you want to use fixed on a nav bar, you always want to make sure that that nav bar is sitting on the front of everything. And that's what you're going to do with the Z index. So basically what you're going to do is you're going to make it 9,999 to make sure that that element is at the forefront of the whole website. So that's basically how fixed is used. And I feel like that kind of covers all of the positioning. So now let's jump into CMS. So what CMS is going to do is it's going to create a bucket for you to create a collection of items. In this case, you can create a project collection. You can also create a service collection, and you can connect those two collections to categories. And those categories could be linked in between. So for example, you can create a project collection with all of your projects consolidated in there, including your web design projects, web development, branding, graphic design, whatever you want, you can drop it in there. And then we can create a service collection, which is going to have the services that you offer, obviously, which are branding, web design, web development, and graphic design. And what we're going to do is we're going to create a bridge, which is called a reference field, so you can connect those projects. For example, if you create a project for Within Light that included branding and web design, we're going to create a reference so it connects to the services and you can display them on your landing page. Let me go over my project collection that we created for Eurecah, just so you can see how we structured this, because it's like pretty extensive. And before that, let's actually go into the Within Light project. So this is all connected to CMS, and this is the landing page that's going to hold all of the case study information about this project. So as you can see, here's a little description of what Within Light does. You can actually go into the Within Light project from here and see the actual website. And then you can go into more detail. So as you can see here, we have the client, the services. So remember, this is my bridge. So this is what's showing the services. And then we have the date. And then after that, we have the challenge, a little deep dive into what this project had, images, you can add videos, you can add whatever you want in here. Then we go into the solution of like how Eurecah helped this brand or company solve the problems that they were having with the website. And then we have a video. You can add video media here. And then finally, we go into the results and a little screenshot of how the mobile version looks. And then finally, we go into the next project. So super easy to navigate and super impactful. But the main thing that we want to focus here is the CMS. So let's go back to Webflow. As you can see, we have all of our projects here. And if we go back to Within Light, we can see our CMS structure here. So obviously we have our name, we have the punchline, we have the industry that they're in. So remember that we saw on the hero how it had lighting design. We also have color. So the reason why I added this field was because In some backgrounds, I wanted to be off black, and some other ones wanted them to be black, like real black, even though this is not real black, but you know what I mean. Then we have an order field. Then we have the homepage thumbnail, the case page hero, all of the fields basically that we are using on that project. It's super extensive because my case study page is pretty meaty. So as you can see, you can make your collections as complex as you want or as simple as you want. So let's exit here and let's create a new collection. The way you create a new collection is, again, by going to the CMS tab, pressing on create new collection, and we're going to start from scratch. So let's call this lesson projects. Our collection name is going to be called lesson projects. And by default, we have the name and the slug. So how do we create new custom fields? We just go here and add a field. And Webflow gives us all of these options. These are super powerful options that you can actually use the most basic ones, just how they are. And then in the future, if the situation arises, you can actually create, like you can use them really creatively for things like sorting, turning things on and off. And I can show you that further down the line. So let's say that we want to start with the name, and then we want to add some description about the project. So let's say the challenge or an introduction to the project. We're going to use the rich text field. Why? Because in the rich text field, we can actually style the paragraph. If we added the short field, it wouldn't allow us to style. So let's use that. And let's call this introduction. And if you're going to create this for a client, I do suggest you add help text. And that would be, for example, type an introduction about the project. This is always good to give the clients, because when they receive the CMS, they're like, what the hell is this? For this one, we're not going to create a minimum character or a maximum, but if you want to make sure that the layout integrity is kept in place, make sure you add a max character count. So let's save that. And then after that, we're going to add an image, and we're going to call this hero image. And we're going to drop the main image here. We're not going to add any max size or anything like that, and we're just going to save it. After that, let's say that we want to create multi-images. So multi-images would be just like a box again, and you want to have just like a few images there displayed. So let's just call this multi-image, drop as many images as you need or as needed, and save. As you can see, there's also an option for this field is required. And the reason for that is because this is typical client things. Like, you will create the CMS, they will approve the design, you will tell them that they have to make sure that they fill out all of the fields. You deliver the project and they don't fill them up. So next thing you know, the whole landing page of the project is completely messed up. So that is basically why you would use that required field. You can also add conditional visibility, which will cover that, to make sure that if something in the CMS is not filled out, it's just turned off on the front end. But this is, you're kind of obligating them to do it, which is nice. Okay, so we have a multi-image. Now let's add another set of rich text field, which is going to be the challenge. Then we're gonna add, let's add more images. So, okay, so as you can see, in this case study, we have so many images around. If you wanted to do something like this, you would literally have to create a field for each image. So if we go to the Eurecah site, let's just exit without saving. And let me just create the collection. This is basically how you create the collection. And then you get this image, this window, so you can actually start creating new projects. But let's get out of here for a sec because I want to show you what the project template looks like inside. So as you can see here, if I stand on this image and I go to the settings, you can see that this is pulling from the mockups image 1. This one is pulling from mockup image 2. And obviously this one is mockup image 3. So it's super tedious because the structure, you have to make sure you have your design first done in Figma so you know exactly what are the fields that you're going to have to create on Webflow. And it is tedious, but it's super cool because you can actually create anything, you know, but you just have to be super organized and clear on your naming. So for example, on this one, you can see that I made it final design image 1. So I know, oh, okay, this is a screenshot of the actual website. Let me just read here the comment. Is it a good approach to design the case study page first so we know what fields will be going in there and then create the collection to connect those elements? 100%. So let me actually share my Figma because I think this is super interesting. Now, obviously, I wish I practiced what I preached. I kind of did, but I just changed a lot of things on the case study page. So if you see this one, this was the original case study page that we designed. You can see that there are some elements that we still have, but I just changed a lot of things because, for example, like I felt this looked really heavy. I didn't like how this layout kind of fell. I didn't have like results for a lot of our clients' projects. So I removed this. I knew I wanted to have a horizontal scroll, but I kind of like reworked how that looked. By the way, that horizontal scroll is a Tim Ricks Patreon component that he created. So I wanted to incorporate that there. I thought it really worked with the Eurecah site. As you can see, we still had the design, but we removed this element here. We removed some of the text because we felt like it was not necessary and we just kind of like reworked it. And then we still wanted to add the mobile screenshots, but we kind of like changed it up a little bit. And this still looks the same. So yes, definitely you want to make sure you have your design first because that will be your map to create your CMS. Now, this is where the tedious part happens when you're creating a portfolio, and it's making sure that you have all of your images nicely laid out and cropped and ready to go and upload them into your CMS. So if we scroll in, if you can see here, we added all of the main images that we were going to use. So hero, sort of like interlude images, the background where the video is sitting, you can see that that one's here. And if you go to the settings, you can see that everything is following the same size. So as big as possible so it doesn't get pixelated. The crop is like perfectly in the middle to make sure that when it is added into Webflow, it's rendered correctly. And you can see that I have my export set at 2x and JPEG to make sure that the quality is perfect. If we scroll here, you can see that I had taken screenshots of the actual design of the website. Something that I used to do at the beginning, I would go into the actual website I built and screenshot the website. And obviously the quality of my case studies wasn't good. So what I suggest, if you're doing the design or you have access to the design, make sure that you get the actual design from Figma, because that will make sure that you have the best quality possible. We have, for example, the homepage thumbnail. So if we go to the homepage, you can see that that's actually pulling here. So that is that. These are all of the images on the horizontal scroll. They're perfectly cropped. All of them are exactly the same size. Here are the mobile versions. I actually had to recreate this from scratch because we didn't have a mobile version design. And then once that was done, I downloaded them and I added them to a mockup, a phone mockup. And the same for every single client. So as I said, it's super tedious, but it will make sure that you have the best quality assets for your case studies. Okay, so let's go back to the CMS. Let's create our first collection with the fields that we have. So let's keep it super simple for now. So let's call this flow party lesson. Let's create some dummy text here. A paragraph, and we're just going to copy this and paste it here. So remember how the introduction was a rich text field? So the cool thing about rich text is that you can actually create styling within the rich text. So if you highlight, you get all of these options. When you drop a short text field, that won't be an option. So let's say that this is going to have an H3, which is going to describe the what you're talking about here. So let's give it an H3, and this is going to be a regular text, and that's it. Let's leave that like that. And then we're gonna go and add a hero image. Okay, obviously, guys, super important to compress all of your images. So after you download all of your assets for your website, make sure that you go to tiny what's it called?
It's tiny PNG, yeah.
Yeah, tiny PNG, and compress all of your images. Because obviously I'm not doing this here, but you know what I mean. So now let's drop a bunch of images here. And you can see that this is how the multi-image works. And then let's just add the final piece of copy here. And that is it. So that's how you're going to create your first collection. Let's wait for this to load and press create. And that is how you create your first lesson. You can obviously duplicate this if you want. You can delete it or you can archive it. And then what we're gonna do is, remember how I said that we're gonna create the services as well? Let's do that so we can have that set up, and that one's gonna be super simple. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a services lesson services. collection. And the only thing that we're going to do here is we're going to create a name, and that's it, because we only want to say that it has, well, actually, you know what? Let's create the name and an image. And the reason why we're adding an image as well is because on the homepage, we may want to create some cards displaying the services, and we want to make sure that that CMS and it's pulling an image as well. So image, save field, and create your collection. Now, how do we create a bridge between those two collections? We're going to go to the settings, and we're going to go add field, and we're going to create a reference field. So that reference field is going to be called services. And by default, it's going to give us a field called collection. And we're going to go here and choose lesson services. So that's our bridge. Save field, save collection. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to the flow party lesson. We're going to scroll all the way to the bottom, and you see how now we have that services field. We're going to drop, oh, actually, we didn't create any services. So what we're going to do is we're just going to use this little plus icon, and we're going to call this branding. And we're going to drop an image here. Let's just use this one. Obviously, compress your images because that's wild. 1 mega. So you can also compress them to WebP format, but the downside of this is that if I'm not wrong, it's Safari. It's always fucking Safari. Sometimes it doesn't render WebP images well. So you may risk doing a project for a client. They're using a very old version of Safari and the image may not render. That's why I'm a little bit, iffy about that. But yeah, you can do that super easy there. Okay, so as you can see, we created the bridge and we said that this project was a branding project. Let's save this. And you can go to your services and add as many services as you want. So just for the sake of it, let's just add also web design. Let's drop an image for web design. Cool. Okay, so we have 2 services in. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to design, or we're going to start the design for the case study page. So if you go here to your pages panel, you see that now we have 2 new CMS collection pages. And the one that we're going to use is going to be the lesson project template. So we're going to start with, let's see, should we just not recreate all of this from scratch? Let's just take the nav bar. Let's take this whole thing, because I usually do this. Like I'll just copy and paste the same structure, and then I'll just start creating from there to make sure I have consistency on the structure. So let's go to our lesson projects template. We're going to stand on our body and we're going to drop the same content that we had on the homepage. Okay, so because this is a CMS page, this page will allow you to connect all of your content to the CMS. So how do we connect the heading? This is where obviously we see this. So we want this heading, the name of the client. You're going to go to your settings and you're going to press in this little purple button and you're going to click on name. And right then and there, you have your heading. Now, obviously, this is not how we want it. So what I would do would be to duplicate this class And I would call this lesson heading 1, for example. We're going to make sure that this is centered, and we're going to resize this. Now, did you see, this is just kind of like a preference thing, but you saw how like this one doesn't fill the whole screen? And it's because you kind of have to be mindful that this is one design replicated throughout all of your projects. So within Light, it's a pretty short name, but maybe you have, I don't know, Mortgage Service of America. In that case, your heading is going to be huge. So you have to be mindful of things like that when you're designing the CMS pages. So let's say that in the hero parent, we also want to add an image. So what I would do is, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the project parent. I'm going to take this component, I'm going to copy it. Then I'm going to go to the hero parent. I'm going to make sure that the hero parent is on relative, and I'm going to drop that there. So because I don't want the same name, I mean, you could reuse it and maybe now call it work image P. Maybe you should call it image P, so you can reuse it through many sections. And I want to make sure that this is, so this is that, okay, perfect. And then this is going to be relative, and it's going to be pushed to the front. Now, because this is going to clash, remember that you're going to have one design for all of your projects. Some designs are going to be super light, so this may have accessibility issues because the heading is white. So usually what I would do in this situation would be to, so we have this class, which is used on 3 other pages. So let's create a combo class, and we're going to call this faded. And we're going to go to this, and we're going to make it 70%. Yeah, 70%, to make sure that you don't have an issue with this, because as I said, it could be too light, some projects, and it will just look washed out. So this is set to the top. Perfect. Okay, so we have that set up. Now, what if we just use the same design, but we change it up a little bit? Let me just see. I heard that compressing PNGs to WebP can result in lower visual quality compared to JPEG and WebP. I'm not sure about the quality, but I do know that if you want to download a full screen image from Figma, it's better to do it as a JPEG. Okay, so back to this. So remember how we had the introduction here? This is something that I actually did on the Eurecah side. I wanted to reuse as many components as I could, but kind of like change it up. So what if we just like change the size of this, like the sides, the positioning? So let's duplicate this class and call this large number case number. Let's call it case number. Okay, so now we have a new class created that we can actually, oh, actually that wasn't the one that I wanted to change. Sorry, guys, sorry. This one. Let's duplicate this class, because what I want to do is I want to move this number to the other side. So let's change this and call this case number. And what we're going to do is we're going to move it to the right. And then now, remember that when we created this grid, we stretched this first column that was all the way to the end. It was like that, but we wanted it to cover the full top row. So that's why we stretched it. And because it's spanning across the width of the whole screen, I can actually use that styling. a justification to the right. Now, in this case, it's different because this is not spanning the full width. So what I'm gonna do here, because this is a grid, remember that we had it in manual? I'm going to tell it to start at 1 and end at the first column. So it's just staying on the first column, and that's it. I already changed the design on this. And now on this other element, we're now gonna tell it to start on column 2 and end at column 2. Now, because this element here, this element here is going to the middle, what I'm gonna tell it is to go to the end, exactly like this one, because it's a smaller, it has a value of 20. If you can see, it has a width of 20 rem. So it's not spanning that whole column. So that's why I can now also use justification. And right there, you have a brand new composition. So we're gonna rename this introduction, and we're going to connect this. Actually, no. So remember how we had two options, a short text field or a rich text. If I go to my settings and I go to connect this, you're gonna see that I'm not going to see that introduction there. And the reason is because you have to drop a rich text element. Right now, this is a paragraph element. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to stand on the parent, which is the about P, and I'm going to drop a rich text element. So I'm gonna remove this one. Where's my rich text element? Here. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is, yeah, wait. So, okay, so the rich text is a little different to style because obviously you can't see it right here, but the rich text has headings, it has paragraph, it has block quotes. So it's like when you see the blogs that you see like the whole body, and inside of that body you can have images, quotes, big blocks of text, headings, styling to the paragraphs, adding bold, italics, and things like that. This is everything that is here. So the way we're gonna style this is by giving a class to the rich text block, lesson rich text. And then we're gonna go to the heading and we're gonna give it a color. Ooh, you see here how I'm affecting all of this. So I'm just gonna use this as an example. Cool. Okay, so I want this to be, is it normal? But I wanted to have add some height. I actually hate that color, and I want this to be smaller. Yeah, light. Okay, I'm not gonna style the rest, but basically, if you want to start style the other elements, you just click on the element and then go to your style selector and choose the global class and then style it that way. Now, because we already have that styled, let's just go to our lesson rich text, go to the settings, and now if you connect it, you're gonna see that it's actually there. And that's it. That's how you style rich text. Now we have a little bit of a problem here because this went to the back, to the top. So let's just move this to the top. I wonder why I have this space here. Let's go back to the CMS and see if there's some spacing here. Oh, okay, because we had, remember how we made this H3? Okay, so let's go back because this is a good example to show. Okay, so let's disconnect this. Disconnect property. You know how I gave all these headings a style? I didn't give it to the heading 1, to the heading 3. So let's just give it to the heading 3. Let's make it white. Let's make it light, and I think that's fine. Yeah. Okay, now let's stand on the rich text again and connect it. Horrible, but you get the point. I feel like this is just super tight and absolutely horrifying, but let's just leave it like this for the example. And then what we're gonna do is, let's remove this, obviously. Let's close this. And that's basically how it would look. This is driving me crazy, guys, so I just have to remove this. I have to remove this. Cool. Okay, a little bit better, but not great. I feel like we should restyle this. So if we go to the paragraph, let's make this, it was 3 REM. Let's make it 2.5. Cool. Sorry, I just hated that. Introduction. Super long, but you get the point. So yeah, that's basically how you connect the CMS. Now, all of these elements would also need to be connected to the CMS if you want them to not be static. So obviously this is our first block, so 1 is fine. And then what you can do is you can just copy this, go to the parent element, which is the page wrapper lesson, and then just paste it. And you can just do the same exercise that I did. So you can do is left. You can move it, and you can just make this back to where it was. And this one the same. This one's gonna start at 1. And it's going to be, ooh, actually, wait, give me a sec. Is right. We're giving it a combo class, and we're gonna tell it to start at 1 and then justify to the left. So yeah, you have your little layout there, and then this one will be connected to the challenge. And let's change this to challenge. Let's make this 2. And that's it. So in this case, let's do something. Let's remove this component. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna add another div block. So you see how like by default, it just went to like this space. So I'm just gonna make it manual, and I'm gonna tell it to start at 1 and at 2, but start at the 3rd row and end at the 3rd row. So I position it to the bottom, and I'm gonna call this multi-image wrap or parent. And then I'm going to add some padding. So let's add a 2 rem padding on the sides. And let's add a 2 rem padding on the ends. If you press command option, you can actually, sorry, command shift. Yeah, command shift, you can control all of them, by the way. Multi-image, here we go. Cool. Okay, so now let's connect it. Okay, so obviously by default, this is going to take the full screen because it's stacked one on top of the other. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna give this collection list a class, multi-image list, and we're gonna make it flex. And we're gonna add 0.5 rem space, maybe a little bit more. Yep. And that is basically how you would add a multi-image. And that's it. So that's basically the breakdown of how I would start building my CMS collection. Now, if we go back to the homepage, this is just to kind of like wrap it up. Remember how we had the, it's this one. Remember how we had our sticky section here? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna make this CMS, because obviously we want somewhere so we can like redirect people to the landing page of each project. So we have all of our projects here. Let's erase this. We have all of our projects here. So what we're gonna do is we're going to wrap this in a div block, and we're gonna call this actually no, one sec. Let's not structure it that way. Let's leave the project parent and let's add a collection list right there. So let's move this collection list to the top. And what we're gonna do is this collection item, we're gonna grab this work parent, which is this one, our actual work parent component, and we're gonna nest it inside of the collection item. Oh, I have to connect it, sorry. Double click to connect your collection. We're gonna connect it to the lesson projects. So right there, we have our first project. It's not going to be, or I guess we can duplicate the listing. So let's take the work parent and drop it inside the collection item. So I'm not sure if you guys know the structure of CMS, but basically we have a collection list wrapper, which is the main outside box. Inside of that box, we have the collection list, which is the list of all of the items you have inside of your collection. And then inside of the list, you have your item, which would mean your project. So let's erase this because we don't need it anymore. And if we go back to our CMS and we duplicate this one, let's just duplicate it for now. Let's call this within light lesson. And then let's duplicate it again. So we have 3. Lesson 2, I guess. So now we have 3 items, right? If we go back to where we were, now you can see that we have our 3 items. Now, there is a little weird thing here. So remember how we had the sticky position on the work parent? Because now the item is the one that it's being rendered, not the work parent component, we can make this relative. We can leave it relative how it was. This is supposed to be auto. Now this element, the collection item, is the one that it's actually containing the project. So that's the one that's gonna have to be sticky. So let's call this collection item sticky. Collection item sticky. And now we're gonna use that positioning that we learned. We're gonna give it a 0. And now we have sticky. Now, let's connect the name. We're just gonna go here, go to the purple thing, and press name. And right there we have our name. And then if we use also the same thing, we're gonna link it to the current lesson project. And that has worked beautifully. And then for the image, we're going to connect it to the main hero image. Now, you can also access the settings, like, you know how like I usually go to this one here? You can also access the CMS settings here. So you can connect it to the image. And there's so many other things we can do, but for now, let's keep it simple. That's what we have. And if we go into our preview and we click here, you can see that we have accessed our landing page. And that's basically how you do it. And that's it. So I think let's keep it here. Let me know if you guys have any questions. And yeah, we can go through Phil's issue if nobody has any questions. But hope you guys liked it. Yeah,